Computer. Okay, so we are continuing on. We're now into the first century. So I don't know if we spoke about this before. I apologize. So Herod dies. Yeah, Herod. He's set up by the Roman emperor. Herod is trying to figure out whether he's really Jewish or not. He's trying to prove that he's Jewish or not. He builds the Beis Hamikdash. He makes a great enhancement to the temple. He makes it he brings on marble. They said it was the most beautiful structure in the world at that time because it looked like the mountain Har Hamaria, which is the mountain in which the temple is sitting on. It's a mountain. You guys know. It looked like a snow-capped mountain. Anyway, he dies around the real 40 BCE. His kids will be taken over. So I want to speak briefly. There's two sub-periods over here. We're going to be talking about the whole period of time that we're going to be talking about from the year 0 to 500, which will take us probably a couple classes, is 0 to 500, two sub-periods. You have the first 200 years, which is called the Amoraic period. Tanaic period for all the Tanas. So these are the people that are quoted in the Gemara, the Mishnah. These are all the people in the Mishnah. You have Hillel, Shammai, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. You got these guys. Then you have Rav and Shmuel at the very end. They don't make it into the Mishnah per se. They don't make it into the Mishnah. Some say maybe Rav does once in a while. I don't know, but he doesn't. And they begin the Talmudic Gemara period, the Gemara period, Amoraic period. So you have the Tanas and the Amoras. Those are different periods, but we'll talk about exactly how that all came out to be. Now, at this period of time, once Herod dies, Herod's children are fighting for control over a lot of the areas of the Galil, which is in the north, Idumea in the south, Samaria in the east, near the in the east, but over there in the east, covers kind of like a large area. They're fighting for control. Now, there's three main things I want to speak about. 70 AD, like the big events that are going to happen in this 500-year period. Really, in the first 200 years, is going to have the destruction of the second temple, in the year 70 AD by Titus, Vespasian, but really Titus. Then you have the Bar Kokhba revolt, which happens the year 115 AD. And then you have the post-Bar Kokhba revolt, which is about 30 years later. And why did these revolts happen? Okay. Now, so you have the Herodian children who are running around trying to make the Romans happy. They establish horrible governors to pay them and pay themselves. Yeah, Rome is all about what you just send us money. Give us money. We'll, for the most part, leave you alone until we don't want to leave you alone, but pay us money. There's a great census that happens in the year 6, which Jewish people don't like census because why did they make a census? They made a census. The Romans made a census in Israel to find out how much tax we can really give you. And we're going to have taxation without representation. And this is they're going to be basically what happens is Rome says, fine, you have X amount of people. We expect this amount of money every single month. And then the governors are like, well, we got to take our cuts. And then they squeeze the Jewish people even more. However, they're taxing everything and therefore restricting trade, and therefore the Jewish people can't really make a living. They're going to be like France, where we're going to take a vacation 6 months out of the year. There's no point in working any harder, like communism. There's no point. Anyway, we're going to get upset with that, and you're going to start have the Kanayim. The Kanayim, the Zealots, are going to come about. So now, in the year 20 AD, Herod Antipas, who is the son of Herod Antipas, he decides to build a city in honor of the great emperor Tiberius. Tiberius is a city on the Galil by the Sea of Galilee, one of the 4 holy cities, actually. Now, it was more of like the 4 holy areas, but once Herod Antipas made into a city, then we became one of the 4 cities. We gave it a name. We gave that area a name. It used to just be called the Galil. Yeah, Hagalili. People from there were called the Galili. People from the Galil. He called it. And the point. Why is that significant? That's the significance of that is we're just showing the people who ruled over Israel had tremendous allegiance to Rome, that Rome was really about everything. In 37 AD, Tiberius was succeeded by Gaius Caligula. Gaius Caligula, okay, this is the emperor of Tiberius. He eventually, died. It used to be in Rome that you would only be an emperor or consul for 1 year. And that's why there was so much fighting and expansion within Rome, because you had 1 year to prove yourself. And what was the best way to prove yourself if you were Roman? By what you conquered. And you try to get as much money as you can, because that was going to be your payoff. They don't have. It's not like when you leave the presidency, you get to speak. You get $100,000 every speech you give. They didn't really have that. So they had to make as much money as they could. Anyway, so these emperors I mean, if you like Julius Caesar, I guess you get murdered on the Senate floor. But for the most part, you didn't really last very long. So Tiberius, he ends up. He had a pretty good run though. I think he was there for like 17 years. Gaius Caligula. Now Caligula was a psychopath. But he had a schoolmate, somebody he went to school with, Agrippus. Agrippus was a Jew, not from, but he lived in Babylonia. No, I believe he lived in Alexandria. They went to school together. They went to boarding school, rich kid boarding school, whatever. He was a Jewish kid. They were good friends. Gaius Caligula said to Agrippus, why don't you go be governor? They're your people, you understand them, and I'll make everything come see, come sa. Everything will be fine and hunky-dory. But that didn't really last very long. It didn't really last very long that Caligula left Israel alone and left Agrippus alone. In 41 AD, Caligula, and this is going to be very significant, he made a decree that every religious institution needs to have a golden statue of him, which really fed and unified the Cannaim, those that hated the Romans there. And not only the Cannaim, the Zealots, they had this faction of guerrillas, but all of the Jewish people started to come together and be against this. This is absolutely insane. This is blasphemy, I say. Now, you should know there's a very powerful diaspora. You should know, obviously, Babylonia still had a powerhouse, was a powerhouse. So Iran, Iraq, Jewish life over there was very powerful. Most of you're going to know the Gemara comes from there, right? The Babylonian Talmud is in Babylonia, in Babylon. So most of the Jewish people were still in Babylon. However, we kept our eye on what's going on in Israel. We still had, a lot of us had family there, etc., etc. But the biggest city of Jewish people, which had the most Jews, was Alexandria in Egypt. There was, I believe, 1 million Jews there. There was thousands of shuls, l'shtiblach, schools, and it was kind of like America. There was, you had some religious people, mainly not religious people, a lot of traditional people, and that is going to play, the Jews that live there, they got money. They got status, they got power. It's kind of out of the reach of the Romans. Now the Romans are very involved there, but it's not, the Jews there have a lot of influence. A lot of the Jews there actually have citizenship to Rome. Having citizenship to Rome meant a lot of things. It meant a lot of things. So they're going to play a role in here. Now, there's a famous delegation from Alexandria that went to Caligula, led by Philo. Philo was not a religious Jew, but he was a Jew that cared. He was like a traditional Jew. And he went to Philo, and we actually have the documentation, what they wrote to Caligula, saying that if you do this, and it's exactly how you would write it nowadays. If, with all due respect, and if you whatever needs to come with it, they said if you do this, if you put a statue there, the Jews are going to kill themselves before they allow you to do that. And Caligula famously said, okay, so go ahead. Fine. So so that was a big defeat. The Jewish people are preparing for battle. They are fired up, getting ready to stop the statue from coming in. The statue was being built in Damascus. As it's being carried from Damascus to Yerushalayim, Caligula dies on the 22nd day of Shvat, not too long ago, just a couple of weeks ago. And it was celebrated as a Yom Tov for many, many years, even after the destruction of the temple. I believe it was a Yom Tov. Chav Bei Shvat was a Yom Tov. Now, in the year 66, the Romans were, by the time the year 66 comes around, the Romans are really squeezing. The governors are terrible. The people they can't make a living. They can't even move. A lot of restrictions and a lot of tension comes to head. And the Jews there were many factions as to what to do about the Romans, much like, I really do believe this, much like in Israel in 1948, or really like let's say 1940, I don't know, 1944 to 1948 to 1949. The Jews in Israel, when the state of Israel was being founded, there were different factions. You had the Irgun, the Palmach, whatever, you had Lehi, you had all these different factions. So you basically it was really divided into two. You had Ben Gurion, very liberal, much like Israel today. Let's ask other countries to help protect us. Let's look good in the eyes of the nations. And then you had Menachem Begin, who was head of the Irgun. It says we forget relying upon other people. We've relied on other people enough, and we only get shot in we just shoot ourselves in the foot. Let us be self-sufficient and fight till the end. Now, Ben Gurion ultimately, I guess, kind of came out victorious at the expense of killing his own people. Bit of a psychopath, if I may say so myself. I only say this because our family was with the Irgun. Yeah, the Irgun was basically terrorists. They were the Sicari, so to speak. Those of you who saw my Instagram today, the Sicaris, they were like Sicarios, yeah? They were hitmen. They were like assassins. I told you this, my grandfather, he's like, oh, there's one thing to kill an Arab, who wanted to kill me. That was one thing, but to kill a Brit, that was crazy stuff. Anyway, their job was to get the British out of there. I don't want any British. You're not helping us. Get out of here. We'll take care of ourselves. The Kanoim, the zealots that lived in Israel, led by the Sicari, said, let's get the Romans out of here at all costs. Now, for the most part, the leaders of the frum Jewish leaders, like Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who's going to play a major role in here, he was of the opinion of, we're not going to defeat Rome. And therefore, let Rome do what they want. Let us kind of like outlast them. Let's just go on, do as they say. Now, obviously, they're going to enslave us, if they're going to kill us or whatever. But for the most part, we're not going to beat them. That's the reality. And there was tremendous sinas chinam amongst the Jewish people, tremendous hate. So from a ruchniistic standpoint, from a spiritual standpoint, that hatred built a toxicity amongst the Jewish body as a whole, spiritually speaking, and therefore it left mayhem and discord and allowed for outside elements to attack us as we were very vulnerable. He felt, let's just be unified by like laying low, and that'll give us strength, and that will eventually push them away. But nobody liked that. So within the Kanayim, within the Zealots, you had different factions. You had the moderates, the hardcore, the Sicari, which you spoke about. Those are the assassinate. They assassinated not only Romans, but also Roman conspirators, which obviously had its people didn't like them either. Even the Jews, it seems like even the frum Jews didn't really appreciate the Sicaris. Fine. And then you had people that were just totally staying away. Yeah. You had what are they called? The Isayim. The Isayim were Jews that lived on the beaches of Tel Aviv smoking weed. They kind of did whatever they wanted. They hung around the Dead Sea. Yeah, some say the Dead Sea Scrolls really come from the Isayim Jews that lived there. They were just like, let's move away from everything and be cool and live our own little life. What does it say? Those that conspire. I feel like it's like those that are conspiring with the Romans. Who said it famously? Was it Churchill said, all you're doing is making sure that you're going to die last. Like that's all. You're going to die, but you're just making it so you'll die last. And then you had this movement called the Nazarenes, which came about led by Jesus himself, who who was a very charismatic person. From a Jewish perspective, he was a very charismatic person. He didn't. It was really Paul. Yeah, it was really Paul that was the PR guy, and he basically said to the Jew, I kind of like see where he's coming from in a way. Yeah, he was saying to all the non-Jews, look, you know that we're a special people, and we have this special covenant, and da da da, et cetera, et cetera. But your big hang-up is circumcision. So you can just do as much as you can without getting circumcision. So it was became very popular, and it's going to become a bit of an issue for us a little bit later on. We're not going to get into
what was Paul's name in Yiddish? Is that Shaul?
Ari. What was Paul's name in Hebrew?
Yeah, it was Shaul was his Hebrew name.
Yeah, okay.
Gotcha.
Ari's my Ari knows everything.
Go to your wingman. Very good.
Yeah,
thank you, Ari.
More like I'm his wingman. I get there's certain things I know not to say in front of Ari because he'll know the answer. Okay. Okay.
Question.
Yeah.
I thought Paul lived like 300 years after J.C. Penney died.
I guess it's a bit of a machlokas. I don't know, Ari. What do you know this history better than I do?
So the Christian scholars officially say that Paul came a lot later. He didn't actually meet Yeshki. He just had like a vision of him, and it's not clear whether he really met any of the apostles or not. But he definitely started writing his letters, at least 20 years after Yeshki already died, which is in 33, year 33.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, there's like a big disconnect, and of course, like the first four books, like the Gospels, it's like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. It's not clear whether they were written by them or they're written by anonymous people about them, or they're a collection of oral traditions, or what it is. But yeah.
Very nice. We have to have a class on this because it's fascinating, actually.
If it doesn't make sense, it's not supposed to. Okay, bye.
Yeah, right. It's because we don't know. That's basically that. Okay. Good call.
I thought the disciples outcasted Paul, Shaul, because he was saying, no, you don't have to keep the commandments. So they kind of outcast him. So he kind of made his own.
He's right. And also, yeah, he's right, because they also traveled through different parts of Greece. That's when they went and wrote the latest letters to like other different groups, communities of Greece and I think Western Turkey.
Yeah, the letters came like 100 years later. The epistles, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good. We need to do a class on this. Ari, everybody put together a class on this. This is actually.
I'm on it.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't. Actually would be very fascinating, and I would definitely join it. So okay, please. Okay. Just to get through time. First of all, thank you for all that. Now I'm very interested. Okay, but the Romans set up a political capital. Anybody know where the political capital in Judea was? Named after Caesar. Caesarea. Yeah, they set up a little political capital over this Caesarea, and the Cannaim, the Zealots, were like, okay, great. Here's a way to really prove that we hate you. All the garrisons of Rome, a lot of them were set up in that area. They went and they blew them up. Yeah, they went and stole things from them. And the Cannaim, a lot of them, the Zealots, they were religious zealots. Yeah, they're like the hilltop youth. In Israel today, they believe this was the war of Gog and Magog. They thought Mashiach was coming, and they prepared for battle, and they got the people actually really fired up. Now, Sistius of Gallus brings in a legion of 4,500 soldiers. So how many legions are per 5,000? Okay, a legion, basically. A legion, which is about 4,500 soldiers. Every legion is about 5,000 soldiers. So he brought in 5,000 soldiers to fight against the Jewish people and quell this rebellion, this Boston Tea Party of sorts with weapons and fighting. And his legion is completely wiped out by the Jews. And now people are really starting to believe that Hashem is on our side. So not only the Cannaim, but you got lots of people coming in. And now Rome is shifting their eyes over to what they call the gateway to the West. Yeah, Israel was very important for those that are trying to control the Mediterranean, because it was the gateway to the West. Yeah, if you want to do any trading in India and so forth, it was a great port city on the other Mediterranean. That's why Greek came. That's why the Babylonians came. That's why the Romans felt that we need to control that area. Now, they quickly set up a provisional government. The Jewish people quickly set up a provisional government. The rabbis, led by Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, was more or less of the opinion, like I said before, that they should live under the Roman rule, because Rome, you might have won this, and sure, yeah, it seemed like people were fired up. They were calling this like the Maccabean revolt once again. Yeah, we were like the Maccabees. He says, no. You're not fighting. You're right. We won that one, and that was good. But now Rome is for sure going to come back, and we're not going to beat Rome. We're too factioned. So now everybody does agree everybody agrees the Romans are going to come back. So they quickly set up a provisional government, and they quickly prepared themselves for a defense, because at the very least, Rome is going to come back and fight. Maybe there's for sure going to be fighting. There's going to be some sort of revenge. Therefore, we should try to protect ourselves. But at the same time, let us speak to them and say, look, we're just setting up a defense so that we can minimize killing while we have a discussion with you to stop everything, and we'll get everything back to normal. Now, who did they put at the top in the north? Yosef ben Matisyahu Kohen, very famous. Yosef ben Matisyahu Kohen. Anybody know what his English name is? He's in charge of the Northern Command. Josephus. He's Josephus. They knew he was a great strategic fighter, and he was a great writer. And almost everything I'm going to tell you comes from Josephus. Now, Josephus, it's shrouded in controversy whether you can take everything that Josephus says to heart. Even in yeshiva, it was always like you could buy Josephus's book and read it. Yeah, you can read it in yeshiva and da-da-da. But everyone, even like the big rabbis and whatever, would come by and be like, we don't know if everything in that book is kosher. Yeah, why? Well, the big thing was Rome is ultimately going to come through the north, and Josephus is not going to win. And he quickly gets captured, and he makes a deal. He says, you know what, I'm a good writer, and I know you guys like to, for posterity, write down all of your battles and show you in a good light. So I'll write down everything. Keep me alive, and I'll write down everything. And he does. We're going to learn about the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash from him, obviously from the Gemara. But you'll see people quote from Josephus nevertheless. He seems to be very like parv, and he does seem to write parv. He doesn't always write the Romans in such a great light, but you have to take everything with a grain of salt. Yeah, history is his story, right? Now, the Zealots, so he just before the battle begins, he moves the people, he gets in charge of the northern command. The Zealots move to the south to fortify it. And Rome has a new leader, so it buys a little bit of time. Nero is the first emperor during this revolt period of time. And Nero sends 6 legions, 60,000 soldiers, appointed by a man who came out of retirement, and he's the master of laying sieges, Vespasian. Vespasian is going to come, and he's going to lead the army together with his son, Titus, or in Hebrew, Titus. Vespasian comes in the north, which is by the Galilee. We'll finish over here. He beats out Josephus. Josephus convinces him that I'll record all the battles ahead. In 68 AD, Vespasian and Titus come to Yerushalayim and to lay a siege. And the Zealots, all of the factions, then move together deep into Jerusalem, set up a ghetto, so to speak. And the famous, during this, maybe I'll do a little class on the actual siege. But Vespasian then has the famous conversation with Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, who was the leader of the Jewish people at the time, of the Prushim, I should say, of the religious Jewish people. He fakes his death, so they take him out of they say you can bury your dead outside the walls, right? They laid siege. Famous story, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, they carry Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai outside the walls to bury him, and he comes out. And Vespasian, he comes to meet Vespasian. I guess he comes out of his coffin, whatever, nobody sees. And he goes, I want to meet Vespasian. And Vespasian comes and says, he says, my emperor, my general. What do you say? My emperor. I want to talk to you about something. And Vespasian famously says, I should kill you for 2 reasons. Number one, you called me an emperor, and I'm not the emperor of Rome. Therefore, you're liable. And number two, you lied to us and you laid siege. Yeah, you lied to us, so I should kill you for that. And just then, Vespasian is putting on his shoe, and a rider comes from Rome riding on a horse and says, you are now crowned, Nero is dead, you are now crowned emperor. And famously, Vespasian cannot put his shoe on. He can't put his shoe on because his foot got fatter. And this is what the Gemara says, when a person is joyful, his body becomes plump. And as a reward and he saw that Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai was a Navi. How did he know that? That I'm the emperor. He says, what would you like? I'll give you anything. And the big controversy in the Gemara is he didn't ask to save Jerusalem. He says, Ten li Yavne v'chachameh, give me Yavne, the city of Yavne, this little city on the coast of Israel, and I want all of the sages so that I can, and then parenthetically, so that I can rebuild Yiddishkeit, Judaism, because Jerusalem for now is lost. Okay, we'll pick up from there next week, or probably in 2 weeks, because I'll do a Gemara class. I'll do a Chumash next week probably, and then we'll take it from there. Anybody have any questions? Wow, yeah, big crowd. Wow, good to see everybody. Nice. All right, fine. No questions?
No.
Peace and love.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.